we're going to talk about summary and reaction. Sometimes it's also called summary and response. And the summary and reaction is one of the most common assignments that you're going to get in college, in any type of subject or class that you take. In a literature class, a psychology class, sociology, criminal justice, nursing, any type of class that you take, a teacher might ask you to do this. The idea is that they'll have you read something and give a summary of it first. And then in the second part of an assignment, you would give a reaction or a response. And I'm going to explain what this type of assignment is like. I have some handouts that I'm going to show. So here's a handout that I will link to in our Canvas space. But a summary is a short, rewritten version of the piece of writing that you just read. It's only covering the main ideas. The idea is that the teacher wants to make sure that you comprehend the material that was covered. And you're sort of translating the other person's words, the writer's words, into something that shows that you understand what you read. Now, why do we bother to do this? It's because when you summarize something, it forces you to show that you comprehended something. It shows that you have decided what the most important ideas are, that you've been thinking about it, that you really are understanding the most essential parts of that reading. So your process is that you are doing active reading and you're identifying main ideas. In a summary, you're really only talking about those big main ideas. You're not getting into the nitty-gritty supporting details and all of those little tiny examples and stuff. So you're just looking at the big stuff. You're figuring out what is the most important. A summary, the general rule is that about a third of the length of the original text. It really depends. I would pay attention to what your teacher says you should have. So think about, as you're writing your summary, if you were going to walk out of a movie that you just saw and your friend said, "Oh, you watched that movie? How was it? What was it about?" You're giving a really short version, right? So that's the idea. If you use your annotating skills that we talked about, writing down the ideas in the margins of a text, and if you use your main idea identification skills, that will help you. So if you do that stuff, you'll have a short, rough outline that you can then write a summary from. I always suggest annotating everything. And a quick short story for you is that when I did my doctoral work not too long ago, I had to do summary and reaction papers all the time for all these readings they gave me. So they would give me these big stacks, like really, I would print them out and they would be huge. I have big binders full of readings, and it's a lot to remember. So the summary and reaction would be like my homework, and I would read the article, I would annotate in the margins, and then when I went to write my summary, I would turn the annotations into my summary, into full sentences. So you're writing down full sentences in a summary. It's going to be short. I will say for a lot of things, um, a lot of assignments, like in your reading class and a lot of classes that you have at Bucks, might only be a paragraph. So the summary and reaction might be a paragraph of summary and a paragraph of reaction. But again, just follow the directions from your instructor to make sure that you know exactly what they want. Back to this handout. It's always important to cite the author and the title of the text in the beginning of the summary. Reduce the length so that it's shorter. You're only talking about main ideas. You're writing it in your own words. You are not giving any opinion. That's for the second half. The big thing about a summary is that you are only talking about the ideas that are in the text. You don't need to quote. You don't need to put a lot of personal or any personal comments. You should use present tense. This is something that's called the literary present. And it's something that anytime you're talking about another person's writing, even though they wrote it in the past, you would say, the author says, the author discusses. So talk about it like it's the present tense. And you'll refer to the author. So use author tags. So you can say, says the author Kelly, or according to the author Kelly, or the author explains, right? Now, when you're writing it, start off with the author and the title. Restate their thesis using your own words. You always want to use your own words. Then do the main ideas from each section, summarizing it, putting it together in a short thing. But remember, it is still an academic piece of writing. So you want to have transitions. You want to make sure that you have good syntax, good sentence structure. You want to make sure it's grammatically correct. You spell check it, all of that good stuff. Now we move on to the reaction or the response part of it. This is the second part of the paper. Now, this is the part where you can put in your own opinions and your own thoughts. So the summary, you've just dealt with what the author said. Here's what the author said in a short version. Now I'm going to comment on it. Sometimes a teacher, when they assign this, will give you some guidance and they'll say, like I was an education major. So when I was doing my doctorate and they were giving me all these articles, they would say, read what the author has to say, give me a summary, and then talk about it, how it applies to your own teaching situation and how you could use these ideas in a classroom. So then I would be taking those ideas and applying it to my own situation. So see if there's instructions like that, but basically you might be analyzing the writing. You might be thinking about the arguments. You might be connecting the writing to your own life. But basically, reread what the author has to say and then look at yourself, look inwards and see how you are internalizing the piece. So if you hated what the author had to say, you can't just say, I didn't like it. You need to explain why. Why, what was it about it that bothered you? Is it the argument they did? Was it the author's style of writing? Is it the way that the author outlined things? Is it the examples they gave? Do you feel like it's not a strong argument? So you need to back it up with those ideas. So if you need ideas of what to write about, you can look in this handout and see like, okay, so maybe you want to talk about some of these things, like what's the main problem they're discussing? What did they say about the problem? What kind of evidence or examples do they give? Do they have assumptions about something? Do they assume that people already know about the topic? That kind of thing. How does it make you feel? What response does it provoke in you? Do you agree or disagree? So thinking about all these things can help you give you something as you're doing the response part of the summary and response paper. It goes on. There's lots and lots of questions here. So if you're sort of flailing, like, what else can I write? Look at all the questions to see if there are ideas that you can kind of jump off of. You don't have to answer every single question in this section. And again, look at the assignment and see if the teacher has given you guidance about what they're expecting. But if not, and if they're just saying, give me a response to it, look at this for ideas. So you want to think about, how was the author's argument? Or is this something that you could use in your own situation? Is this something that applies to your major, or does it remind you of other things that you're working with in class, or that you've read in class, or that you've discussed in class? Any experiences that you've had in your actual life? So thinking about those things, you are writing a response or a reaction to it, talking about how you feel about it, why you feel that way. Use examples from the reading that support what you're saying. make some connections, support any opinions that you have, see if there's any outside things that you can connect to. And the idea is that the response is showing your teacher that you have read the thing that they wanted you to read and that you're thinking about it and connecting to it. So the summary, the first part of the paper or the assignment, shows that you comprehended what you read. You could pull out the big main ideas and you could tell us what that reading was about. And then the response or the reaction part shows your teacher that you understood it, but also connected to it, and that you have deeper thoughts about it. You're critically thinking about that piece of reading. Now, here's another handout that has some quick guidelines. As you write, you should write it in paragraph form. This is just sort of like an essay. Put your big overall main idea in the first sentence. There's actually a sample sentence starter, which is down at the bottom. And it would be something like, in the article, Dogs Make Great Pets by the author Meg Eubank, she discusses how dogs are good pets based on 3 characteristics. All right, so you have in this article, here's the title, here's who wrote it. If you know the year, you could also put the year in there. And then you say what they're talking about. So you state their main idea, you state their thesis statement. And that's always a good sample sentence starter. So put that in as the first sentence. Say, here's the author, here's the title, here's what they say. Then briefly, that's short, explain the major supporting points, like the big ideas, the main ideas. So if it's like a one-page paragraph or one-page essay, you're probably only writing 1 paragraph, and you're only going to have like 3 or 4 sentences about what the author says. It's just the big points, and each point might be a separate sentence. Use your own words. You are paraphrasing this. You are not quoting anything. And it says if you're going to copy something, quote it. But usually in a summary, don't even put any quotes. Because this is academic, it's an academic piece of writing. You do want to organize ideas logically and make sure everything's flowing smoothly. Use transition words, use good sentence structure, use proper spelling, capitalization, and grammar. Now, a good summary is short. It's only the most important information. It's only what's in the passage. You are summarizing the writer's own words, but you're using your words. So you're seeing what they wrote, and then you're telling it in your own voice. Make sure it's well written. And you should not put any questions. You shouldn't put anything about yourself in there in a summary. You're not saying, I think this, or you don't even have to say, I read this. Just say, this article by this author says this. Don't put any dialogue either, no quotes. So you're starting off with information from the text in a summary saying the article, blah, 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 by this author says this thing. And then you give the major points. And then if you are to write a reaction after that, that's when you can share your own opinions and thoughts. So I hope that helps you as you write your summary and reaction pieces.